Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Never Tell Us the Odds.
The show where we hang out and explore fun topics from a galaxy far, far away.
So today we are talking about, if you can't tell from some of our new accessories, we're going to be talking about Darth Maul, who, funny enough, I think is another one of those characters who ironically kind of has showed up multiple times in comics, things like that. But moving forward, we expect him to come back and into some of the new TV series that are coming out.
Yeah, even though he clearly was designed as sort of I guess done in one is how to put it to some degree. I mean, again, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the film that came out in 1999, he dies at the end. Not his best day, I know. And so you didn't expect him to come back. And then since then, he has popped up in the film Solo. Mm-hmm. He's been in the Clone Wars TV show, and he has been in the Rebels TV show as well. And as you're alluding to, similar to what we said in some previous episodes, he's become a character that spans the breadth of certain parts of Star Wars, at least. When you think about the Age of Rebellion and the Age of Republic, Age of Rebellion, Age of Resistance, he doesn't go all the way to the sequel trilogy, but he has kind of straddled two of those eras to some degree.
Absolutely. And he's another one of those characters who, when you first meet him, he's in one episode. Mm-hmm. Like, before the TV series came out, or if you haven't seen the TV series, you just know him from the one episode, and he's the first apprentice you meet of Darth Sidious. And we were talking earlier about what a powerful moment that was when you first meet him, because, everyone else you'd seen at least on the Jedi side of things, you had seen some interesting different races, things like that, not just the humanoids. But with Darth Maul, it was the first kind of dark side character you'd seen who was truly different, and it's like pretty scary looking,
Yeah, I mean, incredibly scary looking. I mean, now you look at him, used to seeing him, the red skin, the tattoos, the horned heads and such. But until this point, the only real dark side characters we'd seen in canon were Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. One completely clad in metal, samurai-esque outfit. The other one basically just looks scary in a different way because he looks, really worn down and scary individual. But this looked like, he could have crawled out of the underside of, the underside of the seventh hell or something.
Yeah, his like crown of thorns he almost has going on. Mm-hmm. The tattoos. So, and in the first movie, sorry, I wouldn't say first couple movies, but he was only in that first movie, just before, good old Obi-Wan cut him in half.
And he had, maybe 4 lines of dialogue or something.
Exactly.
So that's the thing, too. It's like he's there and he's Menace, which is, we talked about how he's been in the TV show and the comics and other stuff. One thing you can really only do effectively in live action, sometimes in animation, is a character who just stands there and glowers at you, whatever the word is, he basically stares at you and creates that sense of tension. He doesn't have to say anything, but his whole body language just creates this incredible, terrifying vibe.
Yeah, it strikes fear into, to the, not just the characters he's going against, but the audience as well. Mm-hmm. And I think he was very successful in kind of that role. And I thought he was, if he had only been in that first episode, it would have been cool. He would have been a cool, one-shot kind of character, almost like, Boba Fett we talked about last week, who, had a little bit more in those, in the first original trilogy. Mm-hmm. But he was same thing again. You didn't hear him talk too much. You didn't see him, he didn't pop up too much. He had a kind of a semi-important role. But then later on, they've gone back and they're clearly, they in the TV series, they bring him back in and they, make him an important character to kind of the storyline.
Right, and almost a sort of third force, because a lot of it, no pun intended when I say force. Force with a small f, I'll say in this case, because a lot of the movies and such, it's very much you have the Jedi versus the Sith. You have the supposed to be good versus evil. Again, one of these days we're going to talk about Grey Jedi, but they set it up in such a way that it's like sort of the polar opposites. Yeah. And then Darth Maul comes in the TV series as almost just being this third force coming in, just like, I'm just here to make a crime syndicate. I'm here to do my thing. And even makes it a point that he wants to disrupt his former master's plan. Yep. Because while he'd been part of it, he feels like he's been cast out and all sorts of things. And that's something we hadn't really... I don't think we'd really seen a lot of that in Star Wars. So we'd have the occasional folks like, the pirates, Hondo and Naka, you'd have Jabba, whatever. They pop up here or there. This was a character that had grudges with both the Sith and the Jedi.
Absolutely.
Fighting against both of them. And we even had, jumping ahead a little bit, but I guess it might have been the second arc he was in, the one where probably the same one where his brother finds him. Mm-hmm. And there's actually even Obi-Wan and then Asajj Ventress, literally a Sith and a Jedi, fighting against both of them, and that really just kind of, I think, highlighted
at the same time. Yeah.
So
as I say, I think we're saying all these things about him coming back in the TV series, but we did say he died at the end of the first movie, or you would know he died at the end of the first movie. He was literally cut in half. It was a pretty clean cut right across the midsection, split in half.
Gotta love lightsabers. They cauterize as soon as they go through.
Yeah, and so for those of you who haven't watched the TV series or read any of the comics, you might not know that he survived. Kind of went a little insane. I think he had a mental break. He was trapped down in, the underneath of
some junk planet, whatever.
Exactly, yeah. So he
was attached to a droid mechanism of some fashion.
Yes, and he had at one point at the beginning he had like 4 legs. He had almost like kind of spidery looking legs, because they kept his top half, and from then on his bottom half was replaced in different ways, eventually leading back to a very similar bipedal kind of look. But originally he did have kind of like 4 crazy spider legs, so we talked about him in the first movie where he was quiet and reserved. And then when you meet him again for the first time in the cartoons, I think it's when his brother finds him, and he talks a lot. It's a very, very different Darth Maul.
So crazy. In both versions, they're crazy intense. Just one is the intense of just not saying much and saying. The other one is the intensity, the rapidity of just everything coming out. And you feel like every thought of these processing, which what he went through. Maybe that is kind of how he has to process.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it is a complete 180.
So from then on, when you see him in Clone Wars and then Rebels later on, he is a very chatty character. He's not in the role of kind of the apprentice to Darth Sidious anymore. He's doing his own thing, and I think that he's taken ownership of his destiny almost in a way. He has his plans, things like that, and we'll get into all that.
He does, but also he's learned. What I want to say was he's learned how to be duplicitous, and actually that's probably not accurate. I think he always knew how. He just never bothered. He tried to be more of a force of nature originally.
Yeah.
Whereas now, and again, jumping ahead a little bit, but in Rebels, for instance, the tales he spins when he talks to Ezra. The Darth Maul from Phantom Menace would have been like, "No, we're doing this. Come with me, or hack off one of your legs." Your choice. Whereas this one, he's much more trying to sort of spin a web, come up with doubt and all sorts of issues.
Yeah, he becomes much more of a complete character, I feel, and which is why I think they've gone back again and again, bringing him back in, bringing him back to life. Even after Clone Wars, bringing him back again in Rebels, giving that little tease in Solo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get back into after he's been chopped in half, he's been cut in half by Obi-Wan, he's down in this kind of recycle area underneath the planets, or in the depths of the planets, and he's found by his brother. And for those of you who don't know, or one of his brothers, so Darth Maul has 2 brothers, actually.
Yeah, Savage Opress and Farrell. And before we say anything about the names, let's face it, that's a Star Wars trope we all come to love and adore. Two choices, either you adore it, or it drives you up the wall. But this is just classic stuff. You've got Maul, and also implies we actually never know what Maul's real name is. We assumed Maul was the title he took when he took on Darth, but given the fact his brothers are named Savage, spelled Savage, and Farrell, maybe Maul was his actual real name. I don't know. But where the brother came from is this was also introduced whole cloth in Clone Wars. It was the
planet.
It was so it was the Night Sisters trying to get revenge against Darth Tyrannus and Darth Sidious. So they basically went out and they tried to recruit another person from Maul's own tribe, and it wound up being his brother. That was not the original intent, but you can argue the Force works in mysterious ways. Even the dark side of the Force works in mysterious ways. And he was very different, much more of a brutal Force, whereas...
He was much bigger.
Yeah.
You see him much bigger. And the other big difference is he's yellow. So he still has the black markings, just like his brother, but he's yellow and black as opposed to red and black.
Something actually surprised me because I had assumed, again, not based on anything, I had assumed when I originally watched Phantom Menace that he was red, some of that tied into the Sith colors, the colors of lightsaber, colors of everything, that it was some sort of skin pigmentation that happened when he converted to the Sith, and the tattoos were on top of that. This certainly seems like, no, that was his natural skin color, in the same way that Savage's color was yellow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so you first meet them on the planet of the Night Sisters. I think they live on the same planet as the Night Sisters.
Planet Dathomir is on a different...
Just on a kind of different side of it. So that's how you kind of get introduced to them. And they get his brother Savage to go find him, to go head back to... what planet did he die on originally?
Well, he died on Naboo, but where we find him is a whole other planet. So, but there seems to be this implication, we've seen hints of it in Mandalorian elsewhere, that basically several planets in Star Wars are just where everybody drops their junk. And so I guess there's a whole industry where planets just pick up their rubbish, put it on a freighter, drops it on another planet. And so presumably, because another Star Wars trope, of course, is dying by falling down a giant hole. So he gets cut in two, falls down a giant hole that I guess leads to a trash spot, and then winds up at this other planet.
One of those typical holes in Star Wars where you don't see the ending of it. It's just goes.
One thing I have to say is that you can tell it's a galaxy far, far away because OSHA, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, clearly does not exist there. Between the giant gaping holes, the fact that no freaking bridge has any sort of railing or anything, or any sort of...
Nothing has guardrails.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know whether they're just thinking, you know what, life is cheap, let's get another stormtrooper up here or what. But yeah, basically, it sounds like an absolutely horrible place to work.
Yeah. So his brother finds him, and there's a little kind of interaction back and forth between the two of them, because he has to try to pull Darth Maul back to kind of sanity in some ways, because he is very much cracked a little bit in the head.
He spent 10 years. So yes, basically at least 10 years, maybe more than 10 years. So at least a decade goes by between the time he was cut in half and the time his brother finds him. And he's just had to survive. He's deal with the fact that he's only got half his original body. He's been hooked up to this thing, possibly against his will, with the spider legs. We don't know. Yeah, he's had a lot of trauma to process, and so to bring him back to be a useful tool for their mother's revenge is quite an ordeal.
Yeah.
So after Savage brings his brother back, sort of from the brink of madness, they try to work out some plans to take a more direct revenge on the Sith, especially Darth Sidious and Darth Tyrannus. That doesn't go exactly as it planned, so they take a more indirect route. There's more of a slow burn that basically involves building a giant crime syndicate that will disrupt Sidious's plan. Maul was privy to at least some of the plan before everything got shot down, but of course Sidious is a guy who does not share well, so he didn't know everything, but he knew just enough to kind of disrupt stuff. And we talked earlier about that he sort of becomes a third force in the galaxy, in the sense that he brings together several of the criminals and several of the criminal groups into one syndicate. There was the Pike syndicates,
the Black Sun, and the Hutts.
Which the groups that do not play well together, they do not get along well together, but between Darth Maul using some of his force abilities and then his brother Savage just basically being a really crazy enforcer who induces terror into everybody, he's able to bring them together and do it in such a way that they were a little bit afraid of him, but also he showed how they could be the increasing profits, they could protect themselves from the Republic. Eventually that frayed a little bit, people started to question what was happening, but that is how he built his initial force. Which then, of course, along the way, he also hooked up with Death Watch, which was a splinter group of the Mandalorians in their quest to try and take over Mandalore.
Yeah.
Which he did.
Which he did in the end. And... so during that time, he takes over the crime syndicates, and he does it in a way where I feel only the people at the top know he's in charge. He's not like the face of the organization. They're not like, oh, Darth Maul showed up, let's all be on our best behavior. Most of them don't seem to know. He kind of runs it behind the scenes, and that's, I think, it's alluded to a little bit in the in Solo, when at the very end, forgetting her character's name.
Quora?
I
think we think it's Quora.
Quora. We'll put the name up there.
And a picture.
And so she gets on the phone at the very end, and it ends up being Darth Maul who she's talking to, which leads to some exciting things that hopefully we'll see more if they go back into any more of live action stuff with Darth Maul.
Which I mean, I was completely blown away. I remember sitting in the theater because I'm like, I figured it'd be Jabba or somebody who worked for Jabba, or something like that, or even possibly Vader to see if it was some sort of weird connection. I was not expecting Darth Maul. That was amazing. And the other thing too that I want to get into. So we talk about how that there's such a huge difference between the Maul from Episode 1 and the Maul from later on, and the one from later on is much chattier, but also I put a lot of that personality down to the person who voiced him, Sam Witwer. And even though in Solo he's in live action, they still had Sam Witwer, who voiced him in the animated stuff, voice him in the Solo film as well.
Yep.
And I like sort of that time, because to me it really tells me it is the same character.
Yeah.
Just he's not quite as menacing, or not as physically, or rather he doesn't go to physical menace as the first choice.
Yeah.
But he's probably got 3 or 4 steps ahead of you, and don't play chess against him.
He definitely has a good plan. He definitely has it, and he's not really afraid to kill anybody to get to it. Really, in the end, that's the whole thing where he's got that Sith side to some degree, where not to some degree, to almost all of it.
Even when he and his brother were working together, he would torture his brother if his brother got out of line.
Yep.
I mean, it just does not matter to him. He's just he feels forsaken by the Sith, but he still acts like a Sith. And so
he's 100% built on revenge. He's 100, he becomes all about, all he wants to do is, I don't know if his end goal is even to kill Sidious or just to disrupt or just to ruin his plans. For him, he thought he was part of those plans in the end, and he was tossed away. So going back to post his kind of second revenge plan, when he's taken over, he's united the syndicates, and then makes the deal with Death Watch to help take over the planet of Mandalore, which is one of those planets where it's becoming a more and more important part of, it's like Tatooine and Coruscant. I think it's almost the third most, Naboo was a little bit, but Mandalore has become a central planet. And I think moving forward, we know it's going to be central because that's where, the Mandalorian is heading, or possibly the Boba Fett show. I think Mandalore is going to be involved. But so going back to Mandalore, he helps take it over with Pre Vizsla, who Pre Vizsla was the wielder of the Darksaber at the time. And him and Maul, eventually, Maul, not really having any true allegiances, betrays Pre Vizsla. And actually, I think, takes the Darksaber from him for a little while, which gives him the right to essentially rule the planet. But once again, I think it's all kind of through the shadows, him controlling the planet. He allows some Mandalorians, they actually all end up having very similar painted gear to what he looks like. They go with the red and black theme, which looks great.
But you're right, because he still has a prime minister that operates that. He's trying to be in the shadows, but it's that weird thing where he's trying to be in the shadows, but he wants at least enough of the Mandalorians to know that he has the Darksaber, because, as we've seen in the Mandalorian TV show, that connotes some degree of right to rule. Because and this also ties into the issue Bo-Katan had, Mandalorian TV show, is that he won this through combat. He fought Pre Vizsla. Slew, I love that word. He slew Pre Vizsla, and then got the Darksaber through combat. Therefore, that fits with the whole Mandalorian code of, I have won this, I should rule, I'm the one in charge. And so for those people he does let know that he's the one in charge, the fact he has the Darksaber just underscores that aspect.
Yeah, and so this is now we're looking at kind of the Rebels time period, I believe, and this is where you find out that he is still in control of Mandalore. It might even be... Actually, no, it's not in Rebels.
No, it's in the very end of Clone Wars.
It's the end of Clone Wars, which was just released recently. And it's the end of Clone Wars. And in the end of Clone Wars, you find out... They go back to Mandalore to stop what's his name?
Garth Saxon.
Garth Saxon. They go back thinking he is kind of the bad guy. But once again, it comes to light that Darth Maul is actually the one who's pulling the strings here. I don't know why we didn't figure it out with the way his helmet looked and everything, and the color scheme.
If you're not looking for it,
it's not even. I guess the Mandalorians are all blue as their kind of their guard uniforms, things like that. So I think at the time we might have thought it was juxtaposition.
Or it's just different. Or also, I'd also argue I know this is switching the switches of universes is what I'm about to say, but the same way people are like, how can Clark Kent just put on a pair of glasses and slouch and not be Superman? Nobody expects Superman to have a secret identity.
Very true.
So nobody expected, I mean, to extrapolate what you're saying, nobody expected Gar Saxon to be allied to Darth Maul. So it's like, oh, that's a amusing coincidence, an interesting look of that, you know? Nobody thought, maybe this means he's allied with a bad guy who may or may not be dead.
It's true. Yeah, and so, the characters start kind of figuring out that Darth Maul is alive. We have some interactions with them, and, once again, his plan to control Mandalore doesn't work out. He's defeated again. Not killed again this time, but just defeated, and kind of disappears for a little bit within those next set of movies. But we see him again in Rebels. So he shows up with interacting with Ezra Bridger.
And at this point, it's been good, 12, 15 years or something since he disappeared. And his interaction with Ezra Bridger is at least the impression he gives, is he wants to take Ezra under his wing so that Ezra will be his apprentice, Darth Maul will be his mentor, and they to establish some sort of strong motivation moving forward. And I don't know if it ever really looked at why he actually wants that. Whether it's because he thought that he misses that connection, he thought Ezra would help him in his fight, or whether he thinks somehow Ezra can help him in his quest to disrupt the Emperor's plans. Because it becomes very apparent. Well, so at the end of Clone Wars, he wants to slew. That's not that personal. But he wants to kill Anakin Skywalker because he realizes Skywalker has some connection to the Emperor's plan and wants to disrupt it. In Rebels, this turns into Skywalker had a son. I want to kill him because he's probably relevant to the plan. His main motivation is, I want to disrupt my ex-master's plan. So then why? But he spends a lot of time trying to recruit Ezra.
Yeah.
And so is that because he thinks it helps with the plan, or just because he wants his own apprentice?
I kind of get because the other person he does, we didn't mention it, but the other person he does try to bring to his side is Ahsoka. So in that end of Clone Wars series, Ahsoka is the one who's kind of really, Ahsoka and Anakin are the ones who are really tasked with going to Mandalore to help, sort out the problem, what's going on, and they find out it's Darth Maul. And Darth Maul and Ahsoka have a lot of interactions where Darth Maul is trying to get Ahsoka, because Ahsoka, once again, we like we mentioned, is kind of going down the different path, not the traditional Jedi path, not the traditional Sith path, and which is where in the middle. So you have two kind of sides at the middle now. You have Ahsoka's middle side, and you have Darth Maul's almost middle side. Although I would almost argue he's kind of like another negative force. He's just like a separate force to the Sith now at this point. But yeah, so he tries to convert her to join him. Talk about how the two of them together. So going back to Ezra Bridger, I wonder if it's one of those things that he has some strong force sensitivity that allows him to maybe recognize, strong wielders of the Force. As we learn about Ezra later, he's very powerful.
Right.
And so was Ahsoka. So I wonder if that's, or, maybe he's just much smarter than we give him credit for, and he saw them in action and was like, these people can help me, so why not try? Why not try to bring them to my side? So
I can see that. Yeah. Because I go back and forth, and what I'm about to say next regarding the death of Darth Maul. Yeah. Spoiler warning, but it's been out for a few years, and
the real one.
Yeah, the real death. This one he hasn't come back from yet.
Yes.
But hopefully he doesn't. It was beautifully done. But ostensibly he goes to Tatooine to track down Skywalker, to get the information from Kenobi to figure out where Luke Skywalker is, and to kill him. And Kenobi and Maul have one final duel. Kenobi wins. And yes, at this point, Kenobi is just a master of stuff. Like, I have no problem believing he won, but it's such a short fight. Part of me wonders, did Maul actually want to die? Did he go there not so much to seek out Luke, but to seek out Obi-Wan, somebody who could sufficiently kill him, basically committing, suicide by Jedi in some way. So, like, rather than actually trying to take his own life, he could die in a battle. Because it really is just a short scene.
It is a short scene, but you got to think about the whole. We're looking at like 20 years where his entire life is just revenge. Like, killing everybody, doing whatever he has to do to get to Darth Sidious, to ruin his plans. Like, that's his end goal. So he spends so much of his life doing that. that he's maybe accepted that maybe Obi-Wan is capable, and Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Ezra, between meeting them, maybe he's realized that maybe their way will work. Maybe their way will have better results than the ways he's tried, because clearly his plans for revenge, kind of brute force, taking over organizations to garner his own power, hasn't worked out.
But it's still revenge. It's revenge he can't necessarily take, but it's right. Maybe he's saying, okay, I see to the fact that your way will work.
Yep.
And my way does not.
Yeah, so then maybe that's why he's, accepting of his final death. It really is a beautiful scene. It's a lovely, because he was the one who originally killed him. He's the one who originally cut him in half, and then he had this period of revenge towards him, towards Darth Sidious, and it's almost kind of like he accepts the fact that, I don't know if it's Obi-Wan is just better than him, or maybe Obi-Wan was right. Maybe Obi-Wan was right in his way of going about trying to stop Darth Sidious. Whatever it is, he has this kind of come to Jesus moment, and goes off, and hopefully that's the last time we'll see him chronologically. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity for us to look back on flashbacks, or just different time periods to explore more.
Yeah, the role history. So I go back to the way you talked about it. And it may sound weird to think about somebody's death scene that's done as a beautiful thing, but it is almost like a piece of poetry how it's put together in some ways. And more importantly, it is a beautiful conclusion to his journey and his story, which you don't get a lot, and we don't get a lot in Star Wars. We don't get a lot in just some of the lots of literature.
Sure.
No, but again, but as you said, that doesn't mean we can't go back and see what he was like 15 years prior, or the role that he played, because he really is just becoming this just unpredictable force. At this point, can show up in any conflict, in any situation, on any side. He may show up in one situation going, I'm helping out the Jedi in this because it helps my master plan. Or, in this case, I'm helping out the Sith with this. He could change allegiances in the middle of it, and that's what makes him, I think, in some ways, still so wonderful as a wild card. Which is funny, because originally, again, as we were saying, he was not a wild card. He was a force of nature.
But he was just a follower.
For the Sith.
He was directed by them.
And then now it's just, if he shows up, you don't know what's happening next with the plot. You just figure that it's bad for the main characters. So.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, though. Because he is, like we said, that first movie really didn't give him the impression of how smart he is. And I think Darth Sidious, that was Darth Sidious's mistake. He formed him into a tool to be used to kill his enemies, which is literally what he seems like. That's his job in the first one. He's there to hunt and kill people. And into this person who, took over 3 major crime syndicates and united them. Took over a planet that is home to the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. Like the stuff he's done is truly incredible.
And he should not be underestimated for what he's accomplished.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But again, that's what's just so fascinating. They took a character that was, again, sort of a one and done, and they found ways only to bring him back, but to make him richer and with so much more depth, which is great. I have nothing against that. It just makes you wonder some of the other characters they brought back and haven't done that with. Why is he special in that way?
Yeah. So. And is it one of those things, again, that, I wonder, was it because he was a fan favorite? Just like how Ahsoka became famous, how Boba Fett was brought back and, has become a larger role, is because something just about him, spoke to people.
Yeah. Although I definitely think it fits more in the Boba Fett example than the Ahsoka example, just because we get to see Ahsoka grow and change over time. Sure. But Maul, again, when he just shows up, first it's in the hologram, he's all in black. Then you talk about that he's red, he's got the crown of thorns, and the first time he lights up that lightsaber and it's a double-bladed lightsaber. I remember the theater going, whoa. Yeah. And that is just, everything about him is different, is unique. And also, at that point, I think actually at that point, that was the most involved lightsaber sequence of battle we'd ever seen. We forget, most of the lightsaber battles in the original trilogy, even the one in Jedi,
pretty bad.
Yeah,
pretty bad.
I mean, I wouldn't say the kind
one-dimensional.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest part of it.
Some of the most okay people are learning how to fight with their lightsabers.
That's true.
And clearly, and part of it is because they're figuring out because of the special effects they're using at the time, they didn't want to break the lightsabers. That literally is part of the reason why they couldn't do anything crazy. But then also we get this whole Duel of the Fates thing. It has its own music.
Yeah.
It's a giant sort of epic.
There's jumping around. There's there's flips, there's twirls.
It just made such an impression.
And have to give a shout out to Ray Park, who is the actor for the original Darth Maul. He's the one who does all these really cool stunts. And there have been rumors that he's been getting back into lightsaber shape. Hopefully they'll use him again as the 3D capture model essentially for Maul.
Right. Yeah. So that's actually speaking of that, that's something too. That not only did he just define Maul and how he moved and stuff like this. Somebody else did the voice. Somebody else has always done the voice, but he did the movement. But when they did the Clone Wars series finale, they brought, as you're alluding to, they brought him back for motion capture for a series of duels so that it could look just as much like that old school Darth Maul, that sort of dangerous individual. And so that was really kind of cool and really impressive. So, but he went from just this random character that made such a visual impact to a much more highly nuanced character that also, in addition to just being, I mean, yes, he's evil, he does bad things, but also I would say it's a fascinating look at PTSD, but it's one of the few examples we get in the Star Wars universe of sort of a form of PTSD happening, which is like, how does he deal? Everything that happened to him, not just losing his legs and cut in half, but it destroyed his dreams and his ideal and his identity. He was supposed to be the apprentice of the Sith. He was his master's right hand. One day he would kill him and he would take over. And yes, he got chopped in half, but it still felt like, his master just abandoned him and forgot about him.
Yeah. He never went to look for him.
No. So, but to be fair, again, chopped in half. But also, as we're realizing, for instance, also thinking Mandalorian, with Fennec Shand getting shot in the gut, clearly death is not quite, or maybe death has more of a window in the Star Wars universe. If you get to somebody quickly enough, put him inside a Darth Vader suit. Makes him into a
From back to tank.
Exactly.
Yeah, heals it all.
Yeah. When did that do back to you?
Perfect.
So that's it's such a change.
Mm-hmm.
But it's right, he has staying power. He may be around for a bit. So. As we were mentioning earlier, a lot of it really was when they first introduced Darth Maul. He had such a different look, an impressive look. Again, he was, as we mentioned, he was only the third Sith we'd ever seen in live screen, and he had to both have sort of some thematic continuity to what we've seen before and look completely different. And one of the big things was not only the skin tone and the Crown of Thorns, but also his lightsaber. The fact it was a dual-bladed lightsaber. And that made such an impression, and that also defined him as a completely different character from anyone we've seen before, not just on the Sith side, but on the Jedi side as well. What a lot of people don't realize about that is that was not the first time a double-bladed lightsaber had actually popped up. In the expanded universe, in the comics the Dark Horse was doing at the time, there was a Sith Lord who actually created the first double-bladed lightsaber. They were running a couple different series, but in order to make sure they didn't step on the toes what would become the prequel series, they had a series called Tales of the Jedi that was set about 4,000 years, I think, before the Battle of Yavin. And they had all sorts of little tie-ins back and forth to it. But one of the folks, Exar Kun, who was a Jedi who had fallen, that became a Sith Lord, he created a double-bladed lightsaber and showed up with it basically just to surprise a bunch of Jedi Masters, and to use a technical phrase, he beat their ass with it. And what happened is Lucasfilm saw that. And whether it was George Lucas, somebody else that designs Lucasfilm, we don't know, but they saw that, like, this is a neat idea, this is a great type of concept. And so they borrowed it and they brought it in. They changed it up a little bit. Like, they made the hilts a little bit longer, they did some changes, but the concept of the double-bladed lightsaber, they borrowed from the comics, they brought into the movie, and to our minds as we talk about it, that sort of accomplished two things. Number one, as we said, it made Darth Maul an individual. It stuck out. We'd never seen that before. And it was such a great way to do that without, you basically cast a spotlight on him without wasting a lot of time on narrative discussion or anything else. He was able to fight in a way we'd never seen before. He was able to wield something we'd never seen before. And that was just so powerful. But then at the same time, there's an argument to be made that opened up the door for a lot of the future lightsaber designs that we have seen in the future. I mean, to stay a little bit on the Sith side, Kylo Ren's lightsaber in the sequel ones that has the two
to form the hilts,
flare guards, the ones that pop out. That is a very different thing I think we'd ever seen before. And then even though it's only a very brief scene in Rise of Skywalker, as much as I hate talking about that film, Rise of Skywalker, where Rey has an image of herself going to the dark side, and she has basically a double-bladed lightsaber that collapses and snaps back out. So just small little changes like that. And I think we can argue that none of that would have been possible if they hadn't introduced the concept of a double-bladed lightsaber to just shake up the whole system.
Yeah, just take the risk to see what would happen. And one of my favorite things now we're talking about this is getting to reminding me of watching the original trilogy. And I think one of my favorite things about Darth Maul and his double-sided lightsaber is he didn't whip it out the first time he fought them. He did, like the first couple times you see him, I think he has a little battle with Obi-Wan when he's jumping back onto a ship to escape out in the desert. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he's only using one blade at the time.
It wasn't until the Palace of Naboo and he faces them both, and that's when...
And it's when, I remember that scene when he throws it out and it just pops out both ends. That was, I think, that moment of when he did that and it popped out both ends, I draw such a parallel to when you first see Kylo Ren in that trailer. I remember that first trailer, you see thump thump in the snow, and he whips out the sword, and the one blade comes out, and then the two cross guards come out as well. So I see a lot of parallels in that kind of big reveal of the cool new lightsaber technology.
I can completely see it, because that's like you said, open the door to saying, we can change this, we can go through. It doesn't have to be the same blade, just a different color. There's more possibility. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first change they made was Mace Windu having like a purple lightsaber. That was the big one. They were like, everyone's like, oh, it's either green or blue or red, and suddenly there was purple lightsabers. And then we get into, Ahsoka had lightsabers of different lengths. One of her lightsabers was kind of like an off yellow, which was different than anything we'd seen at the time. So I think one of the really good things we can take away from the original trilogy is the introduction of Darth Maul, but also just a little bit loosening of the creative freedom, essentially, and allowing them to try new things. You also have General Grievous with his like quad lightsabers. Yeah, we'll get into talking about him definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely something for another session. But the fact that it opened up, yes, it's and that's difficult. That's a trap they could have fallen into, because they were building on a much beloved classic trilogy. However you feel about Star Wars, though, if you're watching this, you probably like it. However you feel about Star Wars, there are a lot of people out there who love the original trilogy. So when the prequels are coming out, you're building on that. You're trying to make something that's different, but you still have to be respectful of what came forward. And they could have fallen into the trap that a lot of prequels do, which is, we'll just reverse engineer everything. We'll just make everything look similar. And yes, a lot of stuff looks similar, but they tried other things that were different as well. And that's what's really
exciting. Some things were successful, like lightsabers, and some things like Jar Jar Binks, not so successful. But neither here or there. But let's look forward. So what do you think, any kind of real ideas coming up that you would like to see of Darth Maul either showing up in the Obi-Wan series, Mandalorian series, Boba Fett series? He could find a place in any of those.
He could. And even so, like the Mandalorian and Boba Fett take place after he died, he's still, maybe there's a way to have sort of a Sith Force ghost.
Exactly.
Or also if you're jumping around in time and looking at different aspects. So, because obviously the Obi-Wan one is a classic example. Now, whether it is he shows up as just a memory of the past, whether they actually cross paths to some degree, or whether I could even see something where he could become Obi-Wan sort of... I can't think of the phrase. I keep wanting to say Bet and Wong. That's wrong. But like, for instance, this is the man that killed Obi-Wan's master. Obi-Wan killed him once, and it didn't take. He knows by the time the Obi-Wan TV show that Darth Maul is still sort of around. He becomes like sort of a bogeyman, maybe to some degree. It's like
he's nemesis.
Yeah, nemesis, I guess. Yeah. So that even if it's not an actual fight, I could see something where in his mind he sees sort of an image of Darth Maul that he's talking to and trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having said that, I would love it if we saw him in a non-Obi-Wan context, just because as much as I love that dynamic's been explored several times.
True.
And as you alluded to earlier, the great thing about Maul is he pops up several times and means many things. I would love to see how other characters react, trying to deal with this sheer force of nature that is Darth Maul.
And I think that's where, if I had to guess, out of those three series, Ahsoka's had a lot of interactions with him. And Obi-Wan has had a lot of interactions with him. So my guess would be in some way through the Boba Fett series. So maybe if it's, if the Boba Fett series is clearly going to explore the crime syndicates a little bit, maybe it's some of that. Maybe it's some of the remnants, of the syndicates that he built. I know it's a different time period, but there could be...
Yeah, but like, so remember when we did the Boba Fett one, we talked about if there were flashbacks to Boba Fett's youth. So what if, when Boba Fett was younger? Because they both hate Jedi.
Yep.
And of course they got the crime syndicate connection. What if Maul at some point took the young Boba Fett and helped train him, or did something like that? It could be a natural sort of connection.
Absolutely.
And one thing would be very powerful would be kind of a neat. It isn't really an Easter egg, but it's like if you see that, but they never explain in the TV show who Maul is. All of us who know who he is go, oh my god, that's Maul. Whereas he's just random strange guy with red skin, trying to help Boba become a better fighter, or how to kill Jedi or something. That could be really cool.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
I mean, I would love to see. I don't know if it fits into any of these 3 series. But I'd love to see live action something about the Night Sisters, who are a whole nother group we haven't really talked about. We mentioned them in this series or in this episode, but they are another group of they're Force wielders. They wield the Force in a different way, than the Jedi do. But they use the same Force powers, and their leader was thought to be as powerful as Sidious. Kind of find out that wasn't quite the case. But I think there's
still impressively powerful.
Exactly, and I think that'd be a very different way of showing the Force, like a more magical, more mystical side of the Force. That's not just all lightsabers and shooting lightning out of your hands.
Especially since she was the one who brought Maul back. She would have that connection, plus the blood connection as well. That would be a really cool, very interesting way to do it. Because also it explores some of that. Because all we've seen live action, not even I think anime, I think all we've seen really are the 2 main factions, Sith and Jedi, with references to the Guardians of the Wills, the ones that we in Rogue One we had a couple of them who did that, but we just don't know how they interpreted the Force or how they explored the Force. There's lots of great possibility for getting this whole exploration of other Force wielding cultures. That would be amazing.
Because I think they've made it more and more clear in the more recent movies that the Force is everywhere. The Jedi and the Sith wield it, but it goes through everybody, and there's got to be other ways, outside of even the Sith, the Jedi, and the Night Sisters that we don't know about yet. Other people who use the Force in different ways that we haven't even thought about. And I think there's a lot of room to explore that, whether it involves Darth Maul or not. We're getting a little off topic here, but I think definitely something that could be. And Darth Maul's home planet of Dathomir really would be a good starting place, I think, for that.
So it's funny you said, and one thing that just popped in my head that I think would be fascinating to see. I don't know how they'd pull this off at all, but the sequel trilogy, I love the character of Finn, and I thought, yes, I'm kind of annoyed he didn't get more of a spotlight as a Jedi,
absolutely.
but maybe he's not supposed to be a Jedi. Maybe he's supposed to be. He clearly has a deep Force connection. Maybe he's supposed to be one of these other groups. So what if? And I know John Boyega has no interest in coming back, but I can go fanboy for a moment and hope. But if it's somewhere like Finn is trying to explore what his connection to the Force is, goes to Dathomir, maybe runs into the ghost of Maul or other stuff, and because let's face it, Maul made a point of saying he was no longer a Sith, even though he acted very Sith-like in a lot of ways. Maul was trying to forge his own path. Still a little more Sith than anything else, but that could be again. They'll never do it, I know, but imagine Finn's character coming back for a TV series where he's going through and he's exploring stuff, and one of the episodes going to Dathomir, dealing with Mother Talzin, dealing with the ghost of Mother Talzin, the ghost of Darth Maul, and it's exploring what their connections to the Force are.
Yeah.
That would be
highly interesting.
Yeah, that's not really a hard prediction because they can happen, but that would still be cool.
Yeah.
So.
But I think in the end, Darth Maul was such a successful character in opening doors really for all these characters that came after it to do something different. The original trilogy, don't want to say it was cut and paste. It was very new and unique for its time. It was only 3 movies, so you can't really get into it too much. But like we said, everyone had the same style lightsabers. Everything was very, everything fit into boxes, essentially.
Right. Which, because he was, we know why, because Lucas was trying to talk about the hero's journey, archetypes, and so there's nothing wrong with that. It worked. It was great, but right, there's not a lot of room to be great. The grayest character in there is Han Solo. Yep. And he isn't really that gray even on screen. It's just when we get into the nuance and everything beyond that. Whereas you're right, Darth Maul opens up the door to, okay, there's more possibility. And plus, I think what he has become, again, the one and done, you could argue how much, there were a few things that were different, but how they have evolved him and changed him. That's something I think speaks to your point about the fact that you can do something different and you can go in a different direction and try something interesting with this.
Yeah, and he's one of those characters who I think now, like Ahsoka, they've shown, for the most part, their story arc. a good chunk of it, and really flush them out. They're, Maul. By watching the end of the cartoons, his personality. You expect like the unexpected from him, essentially. And I think that the depth they've gone to, the depth of the character you get to see. I hope we see that out of more characters moving forward. We really see their, the hard sides of them, not just lightsaber fights and space battles and things like that. But that's why, I personally love the cartoons so much, is it allows you to get into to really know the characters, know their motivations, know their backstories. So I think Darth Maul and Ahsoka, their arcs have really allowed, Disney now to do something different, to explore characters in a different way.
Let's hope they keep that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today. If you liked the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe. If you did not like the video, we're sorry, but please leave a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see that's different. What would you like us to cover? There's many topics in a galaxy that is far, far away. But in the meantime, thank you very much for taking time out to join us. I'm Michael Allen Lake.
I'm Brandon Reeby.
And never tell us the odds.